Hey y'all, this is Sam Warren with the Houston Chronicle, and we're back at it with another film review. And today we're going to be breaking down the Texans' 20-19 loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Monday Night Football. That was a pretty devastating loss for the Texans to fall to 0-2 for the second time in D'Amico Ryan's era. Rashad White had that goal line run with no time left. Baker Mayfield was able to scramble out on 4th and 10 and extend the game-winning drive for the Buccaneers. But what we're really going to be talking about today is CJ Stroud's performance in the loss. CJ was the best he's been all year on the first two drives of the game. Was able to seal the first drive with a big pass to Nico Collins, finally getting that connection going after some struggles in week one. Get the first touchdown on the board for the Texans, and then the second drive probably could have been sealed off with another touchdown if not for a Titus Howard holding penalty that put the Texans in a hole. But after that, the Texans kind of really struggled and offensively, and a lot of that was because of CJ. He went just 8 for 17 with 102 yards after those first two drives. And he really puts himself in some bad situations throwing the ball. Had multiple possible interceptions that he threw. And there were kind of three key reasons that I saw why CJ struggled. And the first one was kind of some issues going through his progressions. So we're going to talk about that first. Okay, so here's an example of where I saw CJ struggle with his progressions after those first two drives. This was a second 11 early in the fourth quarter. Texans are nearing the red zone. They're going to have a chance to score, and they could go up with a touchdown. So what we're going to see is CJ struggle to get off his first read and go to those second reads. And by the time he gets to a second read, he's going to throw a near interception. So what we see and what the play is going to play out like is what he marks is going to be this first read down here, what we think is going to be a wheel route. And then CJ's second read will be Nico Collins here running it in, kind of a dig route that's going to almost be picked off here by Jacob Parrish, kind of working from his coverage. So as the play kind of gets off to its start, we see the Buccaneers defense start to roll back into a cover three look. Deep post here, deep middle here, deep post here. So they're going to be in thirds with Jamel Dean jumping from this press look down on Nico Collins back into his deep third. But that underneath coverage on the cover three ends up including Antoine Winfield down here covering Woody Marks. And what ends up happening is you have a veteran playmaker going up against a rookie running back, and he really just jams him up, throws him off his coverage, throws him off his route. He's going to stumble here even more. But what we see is CJ Stroud really looking down this first read, trying to make something happen, hoping that Woody is able to get out on his wheel route and get upfield and have a big gain. But probably after seeing this, CJ's eyes should be off of this now. It should be on Nico Collins. What we're going to see pretty quickly from here is Nico's going to get open in this window. This ball should be out pretty much right now, especially when you see Woody Marks basically on the ground. But CJ's eyes are still on the running back. He hasn't moved on yet. So by the time that CJ sets his feet here, Nico is already out of his window. He could probably throw it here, given that the underneath defender is now on Xavier Hutchinson, taking him on his in route after the curl. So he could probably hit this window, but it's definitely late and it's definitely a risk. But now what we're going to see is Nico keeps fading. Instead of kind of stepping up into the pocket and ripping that ball when there's a little bit more space, CJ jumps back because he sees this slight pressure. And finally, by the time he eventually throws the ball to Nico, you're going to see Jacob Parrish playing underneath. He's over here on the tight end, playing this flat route, but now he has the opportunity to play in between because Nico's run so far over, just because of the time that it's taken to get CJ to throw the ball. So by CJ throwing this ball so late and getting, being stuck on his first read, that gives Parrish the opportunity to come back. And pretty much this should have been an interception. Like the only reason that this isn't an interception is because CJ throws the ball a little bit too high, kind of puts it where only Nico Collins can get it. It clanks off of his hands and it's an incomplete pass. But to be honest, this throw should really be an interception. And let's take a look at the other angle just to show you a little bit more about CJ's eyes. Okay, so here's that play from the other angle, and just watch what CJ's eyes do here. So now he's dropping back. He looks like he's surveying the field. He gets to Woody. His eyes are here. He's looking down Woody as he's getting jammed up by Winfield. His eyes aren't on Nico yet. This ball should be out right now, but his eyes still remain on Woody as he's getting kind of thrown to the ground by Woodfield. Now his eyes eventually avert back kind of over to the middle field, right where Nico is kind of breaking open, settling down in the middle of his route. But instead of kind of stepping up into the pocket and ripping that ball where there's open green grass, he steps back with the pressure of this Tampa Bay defender in his face instead of stepping up, really making that throw, being a decisive guy. And by the time he just throws this ball, we're not going to see the other defender, but it's just too late. It's it's putting the ball in harm's way, even if you're trying to get it to your best defender. Nico Collins can make circus catches like that, but that's just putting the ball in harm's way and almost taking your team out of a scoring opportunity. So another issue that I saw with CJ against the Buccaneers was there was really some inaccuracy issues from the quarterback, and where that's really going to be exemplified by a couple of these plays here in the fourth quarter. So what we're looking at here is the third down following that big throw to Dalton Schultz, and he's just going to miss Nico Collins here. This isn't an issue of progression or anything like that. He gets to Nico, he knows he wants to throw Nico here against Zion McCollum. That's already worked in this game. He threw the touchdown pass in the first quarter to Nico on McCollum. He was able to get behind him, and now he's going to target him again in the end zone. But what we're going to see is CJ just jumps to that backside, looks at him right away. And isn't really paying attention to any of these guys immediately. He knows that he's going to throw Nico. And Nico gets his guy. He gets him here on the double move. Look, there's going to be separation here. Like an NFL receiver has that separation. An NFL quarterback should be able to make this throw with this amount of room in the back of the end zone here. But what we're going to see is the ball just the sails. The ball's going to hit Nico's hands, and that's a catchable ball, as NFL teams would say. If the ball hits your hands, it's a catchable ball. But the momentum of the play is really just going to take Nico out of bounds if he does catch the ball. It's going to be too high. That's just not a touchdown throw from CJ Stroud, and he knows it too. Watch his reaction down here. He's mad. He's mad at himself. He knows that that's a throw that he has to make, and we can see that from the other angle as well. All right, so here's that throw from the other angle. And what we're going to see is, this is CJ just missing Nico deep on this double move. As you can see here, this is just a little bit of a better angle. Is that this ball's too high for Nico? That's it hits his hands, but look where he is. I mean, it's gonna drag him out of the end zone. If he doesn't get, he could possibly get a toe tap in there, but that's too hard on Nico Collins and too bad of a throw by CJ Stroud that's an inaccuracy issue from the quarterback, and that definitely needs to be cleaned up. And then again here, we're also going to see some more inaccuracy from CJ on the ensuing play. This is 4th and 1. They're going to also try and hit Nico on an out route, but CJ's just going to sail this ball out of bounds. What we're going to see is the Texans try and scheme Nico open on this out route, and CJ is going to roll to his left. And Nico does his job here. He's again on, ultimately ends up on McCollum, and he's going to get separation down here. It's not a ton, but he has this whole side of the end zone that CJ has the opportunity to throw him the ball. And what ultimately ends up happening is that ball is just out of Nico's reach, and it's out of bounds. I think DeMeco Ryans even said it after the game that he thought Nico had a chance to make a play there on the out route, and the ball was just out of bounds. So it's as simple as that. That's a 4th down gone wrong, and that's a turnover. And the Texans ultimately don't end up with points on that drive. basically because CJ Stroud overthrows two balls. And really the inaccuracy issue, continues to go throughout the rest of this game. So here's one more example of where CJ's late game accuracy just really wasn't up to par. This is the ensuing throw that CJ makes right after that 4th and 1 failure to Nico Collins. This is right after Jakob Johnson was able to block the punt. Huge momentum swing for the Texans. They're now on the 35-yard line. Could take control of this game with a big score here. But that ultimately can't happen, and it doesn't get off to a good start because CJ can't hit Xavier Hutchinson on a simple kind of speed dig on this. So what we're going to see is CJ kind of just throws the ball right behind Xavier Hutchinson. This is a weird kind of cover two look that the Buccaneers throw out there. They have this safety drop back into a half, and then they have this safety or this either a cornerback or a safety drop back into this half over here. You have Jamel Dean drop down into coverage here, so that he's not playing in that cover two. But what happens with that is kind of in this underneath look, you have the linebacker pop down, you have Jamel Dean pop down on Jalen Knoll, and that's going to open up this middle of the field perfectly for Xavier Hutchinson speed dig. Look, I mean, that's just a perfect window for Stroud to throw into. And if he hits him in stride, there's enough room down this angle here where Hutchinson could possibly get some yards after catch and take this for a touchdown. But what we're going to ultimately see is CJ just ends up throwing the ball right behind Hutchinson, and just can't make the connection there. I mean, the ball falls incomplete. That's a pretty easy throw. And we're going to talk about maybe some communication issues on the other angle. Talk about what CJ might have been throwing. But it really doesn't seem like it's on Hutchinson in this throw. So this is the same throw where he misses Hutchinson, and maybe this could be a miscommunication on Stroud and Hutchinson's part, but really it kind of just looks like it has to be a bad throw, just the way that Hutchinson throws this route, runs this route. So what we're going to see is same thing. Watch Hutchinson here. He's running this as a speed dig. So this is a speed turn. This isn't a normal dig where he's breaking it flat, and maybe against zone, you're asking your receiver to shut it down, kind of get in a window. That's not what CJ really throws it like. He throws it like with anticipation into that window. And you're not going to ask a speed turning receiver to shut down their route, slow their route that quickly after a speed break. So what ends up happening is just the ball's behind Hutchinson. And that's just another example of CJ really struggling with his accuracy against the Buccaneers, and he also struggled with some accuracy issues against the Rams. I think CJ is at negative completion rate over expected right now. He's been positive in that expectancy rate in his first two seasons in the NFL, and what that means is that right now, currently, CJ is completing less balls than expected of him based on the difficulty of his throws that he's making. So that just tells you that CJ is not in the top of his game right now in terms of accuracy, and those are things that need to be picked up. So this final play that we're going to talk about is going to highlight what I saw as the third issue for CJ Stroud against the Buccaneers, and that was diagnosing pressure and managing kind of the pressure in the passing game. What we saw against the Rams was CJ was pretty good against the pressure, and it was a positive sign because a lot of the steps backwards that CJ took last year was because of the inordinate amount of pressure that he saw from his offensive line, not being able to communicate, not being able to manage stunts, and seeing a lot of defenders in the backfield because of it. And then against the Rams, CJ was decisive against, the Rams were still getting pressure. They got, I think, over 40% against Texans' new offensive line. But CJ was really good against the pressure and able to, hit quick throws, make the right reads in those pressure situations to avoid getting sacked, to avoid turnovers, avoid incompletions, to be quite frank. But CJ kind of reverted on some of those old practices against the Buccaneers, which is probably one of the worst things you can see. You want to see CJ improve kind of in this year three manage with some of those new techniques, new skills that this Nick Caley offense is bringing to him, and getting the ball out quick. And this is one example of where we can see that, is that CJ is just not decisive in what he wants to throw. So this is a an obvious blitz situation. It's 3rd and 10. The Texans are can kick a field goal and come within one. But they can also, with a blitz, they can get knocked out of field goal range. And that's really what the Buccaneers are trying to do here. It's an obvious passing situation, trying to get the ball moved. So the Bucs are going to counter that with an all-out blitz here. And CJ is going to know that. You have 6 guys up here on the line. You have a 7th guy that's walking down here, and this 7th guy is going to end up coming too. So Tampa sends an all out man blitz here, and the Texans don't have that protected. So they have 5 guys in line. They have Dare Ogunbowale here to pass block, but that's only 6 guys in protection, going up against 7 guys coming. So CJ has to know here that he's going to have one unblocked defender, and he has to get the ball out quick. So it looks like he's going to do that. What we see here is CJ pretty immediately go down to Xavier Hutchinson on this 1 yard or this 1-step slant. He's looking at him right now. But what he does see as we see this play develop here is, instead of right now him throwing the ball, he sees Jamel Dean jump down on this slant. And because it's 3rd and 10, I think the reason why CJ ultimately hesitates here is because he doesn't think that they're going to get a first down, with the corner jumping down on Xavier Hutchinson. But CJ's planting his foot, and he's turning this way, and the rest of his receivers are off to his right. So with a free rusher bound to come with this blitz package, by planting his feet and turning towards Hutchinson, that basically ensures that that's his one option right now. He's not going to have time to go into the rest of his read. So what CJ needs to do here is, if he's not going to throw to Hutchinson, he needs to not set his feet. He needs to look back in his progression in his drop and be able to get back to one of these backside reads if that's what he ends up wanting to do. But if CJ's going to plant his feet like this and throw and look at Hutchinson, he needs to make this throw, because ultimately you have Deion Jones here, you have Winfield here, that are both going to get in the backfield and disrupt his timing. Now with the feet planted, adjusting to this backside, he really has no chance at making a positive play here. And his only goal is to not get sacked and ultimately prevent himself from taking the Texans out of field goal range. But what CJ ends up doing here is ultimately almost takes away the Texans' scoring opportunity in total by throwing what should be an interception to Levante David here. What we see is this is just a bad throw, and I think it's ultimately a result of CJ kind of just getting uncomfortable with after working off that Xavier Hutchinson slant. He just really didn't know what to do, and kind of panicked and just got the ball out. And for a 3rd-year quarterback, that's definitely not what you want to see in these late game situations. When the game's on the line, the team needs the quarterback to step up and perform. You don't need near interceptions to linebackers in that situation. So again, here we'll just see this throw from a different angle. We'll see CJ's eyes, with this whole situation. I mean, you see the 6 defenders walked up. CJ should be looking at and seeing the 7th guy walk down too, preparing for having an unblocked man. And I think he's prepared for that. And he's in his drop and he has his eyes on Hutchinson. I just think, by him not wanting to throw Hutchinson and not being decisive in his decision, especially against a blitz like this, that's where we see some issues come to fruition. And ultimately, like this ball just needs to not be not be thrown in the area of defenders. Maybe he's targeting Nico Collins, but this ball just needs to either get thrown away or it needs to go towards Hutchinson and trying to get anything positive. So That's kind of the three biggest issues for the Texans quarterback in CJ Stroud against the Buccaneers, where getting stuck in his progressions, going through that first read and not being able to get his second read in time, as we saw with that near interception when he was targeting Nico Collins, that Jacob Parrish had. Then we saw a lot of inaccuracy from Stroud, both in the red zone and then on that one Xavier Hutchinson throw. And then we saw him struggle to manage against the pressure. Um, and, this offense is still a work in progress. Nick Caley still needs to impose his philosophy, and really get this offense going in the right direction. It's only week two. I mean, it's only been two games, but personally, I believe that this, as much as week one was bad with the Texans not scoring a touchdown, CJ Stroud did look like he took a little bit of a step back in week two against this Buccaneers defense. So going up against the Jaguars, you really want to see CJ kind of put everything together with having some of those deep shots and having some of those explosive plays like he had against the Buccaneers, but also melding that with the pretty solid play that he got in the middle of the field. Being decisive, being good in his progressions, being quick against the pressure. Seeing some of those things against that he did against the Rams and kind of putting that all together. So that's what I had for week two. Looking forward to week three, and thank you always for watching.